Hello there. Nigel Farage might have to negotiate a few bear traps now he's giving his full support to Reform UK. Now, if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe and then like and comment below. As you will know, Nigel Farage has thrown his political weight behind Reform UK and has been engaged in secret talks with Tory MPs. And that begs the question of whether Farage is merely engaged in rebranding Tories, something that a lot of people do not want to see. Because the words reform and conservative are not exactly synonyms. A centre-right party that wants to reform the system is different from a centre-right party that wants to conserve the system and keep things the same. In fact, the Tories are now a left-of-centre party that wants to keep things the same. Have you seen any real urge from the current Tory government to reform anything? In fact, they've even managed to conserve the big spend, big tax, big state. Have we seen anything from the Tory backbenches that looks like they want to change anything in any substantial way? They can't even get moving with ditching any now outdated EU regulations that get in our way. In fact, they've conserved them. And when one new Prime Minister does come along and says something a bit radical, it's Liz overboard. So trying to fill your support base with the sort of people who think Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt are the answer to the nation's problems may not be such a good idea. Especially if you're looking for grassroots Tory voter support. And nor is suggesting that a certain Tony Blair takes on responsibility for the vaccine rollout, something Nigel pushed during the pandemic, if you remember. And many of those Tory MPs backed the lockdowns, as well as voting to take away the jobs of care home staff who would not submit to mandatory medical interventions. They have also ensured that a no-growth or even degrowth economic package has been put in place. Most of them also sit there quietly while the hotels fill up. And when was the last time you saw one of them demanding the reform of the House of Lords? In fact, what has happened to that? In short, what we need to see in Parliament right now is a clean slate of energetic people with fresh ideas about taking the country forwards. Trying to light blue wash a load of dark blue Tories won't achieve anything. When Nigel got Carswell and Reckless to cross the floor to UKIP, that was all based on their joint belief in achieving Brexit. But when it comes to reform, or Tory, it involves a much wider range of issues. And how many Tory MPs currently look like a good fit with a truly reforming party? At the moment, most of them look to be in pure survival mode, possibly looking for any port in a storm, any port except the Tory port. Other people to avoid would be the high-flying finance types with a lot of vested interests in their baggage, the type that is about as disconnected from the ordinary citizen as you can get. And cutting the number of lawyers would be a positive step too. But the bottom line is, Reform UK needs to enlist the help of those who truly wish to see reform, or else the brand will not do what it says on the tin. Now, have you heard about this proposed driveway tax or driveway surcharge? Yes, there is a proposal out there to start taxing people's driveways. Now, it's not a modern sort of window tax. What the government's infrastructure gurus are saying is that paved over driveways pose a flooding risk because they prevent water draining away naturally. And with the projections from global warming about raised water levels, then paved driveways will add to the flooding risk, they say. And the National Infrastructure Commission says that more than 600,000 properties in England could be at risk of flooding. And the Commission also points to urban sprawl as a problem when drainage capacity is ignored. And the NIC also says that 12 billion quid must be spent in the coming 3 decades to alleviate the risks. And they want things like drainage ponds factored into every new development. So it looks like we'll see people saving a few bob by ripping up their paved driveways and putting gravel down instead. But how about all those large car parks outside supermarkets, company buildings, council buildings, public car parks, etc.? How about getting them to change their surfaces? But I doubt the worry about these things will last long once it becomes apparent that for many people electric cars are not an affordable answer for them, and their driveway just becomes redundant. But if the population of the UK is going to continue to grow at its current rate, and we need an extra 300,000 houses to be built as a minimum every year, then the problems can only get worse, cars or no cars. And non-covered driveways always end up a muddy, rutted mess anyway. The government climate change-based shakedown of the people continues. And in other climate news, those living in rural areas and who rely on oil heating systems could be forced to remove them and replace them with heat pumps under government net zero plans, says the Telegraph. And this could cost them 11,000 quid more than replacing their old oil system with a new one, probably due to the need to fork out for the wider bore pipes and much larger radiators. But it's also another neat way to increase employment, increase the tax take, increase GDP, and so allow more government debt to be taken on. Now everyone keeps saying how cheap green stuff is or how cheap it'll get, but the more green we get, the more expensive it all seems to get. Now, the difference between the way the UK authorities mollycoddle certain protesters and the way the Chinese police dole out public beatings to their protesting citizens could not be more stark. And a video has emerged of a woman standing firm during an anti-zero COVID lockdown protest in front of the well-armoured Chinese police and filming them as they engaged in acts of seemingly random violence. She stood resolute until they knocked into her, grabbed her phone and gave her a taste of the rough stuff. And that brave woman is now being referred to as the Tank Lady, echoing that famous Tiananmen Square video of the man carrying bags facing off against a convoy of Chinese army tanks. Now, I'm not saying that our police should emulate those Chinese tactics when dealing with the supergluing eco-loons, but those eco-loons should count their blessings that they are here in the UK and not at the mercy of a tyrannical regime. Now let's talk about the state of Christianity in England and Wales. Over to you, Richard.
Thank you, Jeff, and good evening. According to some new stats that recently came out from the ONS, Christians are now a minority in England and Wales, with 46.2% identifying as Christian, and down from 59.3% in 2011. Just let that sink in for a moment. You, yourself, may not be a Christian, but the percentage of those in the UK identifying as Christian has fallen, and you have to ask yourself, why such a drastic change in demographic? Was there some great moment of epiphany where the people of Britain decided that enough was enough and stopped believing in the Christian gospel? Well, the answer is yes, but only to a certain extent, and that's only part of the picture. I would offer this as a reason for the causation for such a fall in the percentage of Christians in England and Wales. To me, it is clearly down to the infestation of the far left in education and the media, who oppose all forms of religion, except for one religion, that is. And that one religion exemption, has coincidentally more than doubled in size, in its percentage, that is, of the population, since 2001. But how has one religion more than doubled since 2001? when another has dropped by 13.1% since 2011? I'm wondering if there has been another demographical change in the population to facilitate such a change in faith. Now, I was going to say what's behind the demographical change in England and Wales, but I forgot. I forgot what it was, and I'm so sorry, and I don't think I'm going to remember. Ah, silly me. That's what happens when you accidentally turn the BBC on for a moment. All capacity for critical thinking just leaves you. So, let us all celebrate the enriching shift in our demographics, traditions and culture, because were it not for demographic change, we would all still be ancient Britons. Anyway, back over to you, Jeff.
Thank you, Richard. And finally, when subscribing, please don't forget to press that little bell and also select the all option, or you won't get any notifications when I publish a new video. And thank you all so much for taking the time to watch the show.